Dham ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Maharani ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. There you go. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We continue our study of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. We are in chapter 11 and today's text is number 30. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Atavishatva bhavanam sarvakamam anuttamam prasada yatra patninam sahasrani chashodasha. Atavishatva bhavanam sarvakamam anuttamam prasada yatra patninam sahasrani chashodasha. Atavishatva bhavanam sarvakamam anuttamam prasada yatra patninam sahasrani chashodasha. Please chant.
Hare Krishna. Atha vishad swabhavanam sarvakamam anuttamam prasada yatra patninam Sahasrani cha shodasha.
Atavisat bhavanam sarvakamam anuttamam prasadayatra patninam sahasrani cha sodasha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Atha vishat savabhavanam sarvakamam nutamam prasada yatra patninam sahasrani cha shodasha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Atha veshatva bhavanam sarvakamam anuttamam prashadayatra patninam sahasrani cha shodasha.
Atha avishat swabhavanam sarvakamam anuttamam prasadayatra patninam sahasrani cha sodasha.
Anyone else? Okay. Atha, thereafter. Avishat, entered. Svabhavanam, personal palaces. Sarva, all. Kamam, desires. Anuttamam, perfect to the fullest extent. Prasadaha, palaces. Yatra, where. Patninam, of the wives, numbering. Sahasrani, thousands. Cha, over and above. Shodasha, 16. Translation. Thereafter, the Lord entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,000. Purport. Lord Krishna had 16,108 wives, And for each and every one of them, there was a fully equipped palace, complete with necessary compounds and gardens. Full description of these palaces is given in the 10th canto. All the palaces were made of the best marble stone. They were illuminated by jewels and decorated by curtains and carpets of velvet and silk, nicely bedecked and embroidered with gold lace. The Supreme Personality of Godhead means one who is full with all power, all energy, all opulence, all beauties, all knowledge, and all renunciation. Therefore, in the palaces of the Lord, there was nothing wanting for fulfilling all desires of the Lord. The Lord is unlimited, and therefore his desires are also unlimited, and the supply is also unlimited. Everything being unlimited, it is concisely described here as sarvakamam, or full with all desirable equipment. Translation again. Thereafter, the Lord entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,000. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nir Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarane Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjnana Shalakshaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, so we're continuing to see how Krishna was received when he returned to Dwarka. Today, we're learning about his wives and their palaces. So today we'll have a little bit of a story time, and then we'll get into a little bit of tattva. Because when I read the verse, I tried to recall in my head, because I knew at one point I could name the 8 main wives of Krishna and how he came to be married to each of them. And then, of course, the 16,100 others. And I tried to recall all of them, and I couldn't. I recalled most of them. So I had to review. So I thought, well, maybe everyone would like to hear all of the stories. So we'll do that first. So I would say most people in here can recall the story of Rukmini. That's it's covered with the most amount of verses in the 10th canto. You know, this famous thing where Rukmini, she was set to marry Shishupal, but she didn't want to. She wanted to marry Krishna. So she sent Krishna a note and asked him to rescue her from this terrible arranged marriage. And so this whole thing goes on. Krishna gets this letter at the last minute. He goes, he has to take advantage of a very specific opportune moment in order to kidnap her. Anyway, so most of us know this story. So he was able to kidnap Rukmini, and so that was his main queen. Then 2 of his other wives are sort of tightly tied in with the story of the Shamantaka jewel. So there was a devotee. He was actually a king, King Satyajit. He was a devotee of Surya, the sun god. And he was such a good devotee that Surya gave him this very luminous gem called the Shamantaka jewel. Now, it was so effulgent that when Satyajit wore it around his neck, no one could see his face. It let off that much radiance. And so sometimes if he was wearing it around his neck, people would think, oh, that must be Surya. He's come to visit Krishna, maybe, like that. And so extremely effulgent gem. Anyway, King Satyajit had a palace also in Dwarka. And instead of wearing it around his neck all the time, after a while, he had these brahmanas install it in his temple room because, you know, there were problems. Everyone was pretty much going blind when he's walking around and they couldn't tell who he was. So he had this gem installed in his temple room, and it would produce about 170 pounds of gold per day, and it warded off all kinds of evil and misfortune. So in the area where it was kept, there wasn't any misfortune or any evil that could happen, along with 170 pounds of gold daily, right? So it was pretty cool gem that he had. So at one point, Krishna requested that Satyajit give this jewel to King Ugrasena, because King Ugrasena, so there are many kings in Dwarka, but Ugrasena, Krishna appointed him the main king. And so Krishna suggested that Satyajit give the gem to Ugrasena, but Satyajit refused, not realizing what a great offense that is, to refuse the order of the Supreme Personality. I mean, it wasn't an order, it was a request, but to refuse the request of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not the wisest thing to do. On another occasion after that, Satyajit's brother, Prasena, asked if he could take the gem with him hunting for good luck. And so Satyajit said, okay, sure, go ahead. So Prasena went on his hunting trip. While he was on his hunting trip, he was attacked by a lion who killed both him and his horse. And then the lion took the gem and went into this dark cave. In that cave lived Jambavan. We know Jambavan from the Ramayana. He's the king of the bears, very powerful, and a very dear devotee of Lord Ram. So when Jambavan saw this amazingly bright jewel, he wanted it. And so he fought the lion, killed it, and took the jewel, and he gave it to his son, who was just a cub at the time, to play with. He thought this is a nice toy for my son, so he gave it. All right. So meanwhile, back in Dwarka, Satyajit was wondering where his brother was. He didn't come back from his hunting trip. And so he thought, oh, I know what happened. Krishna must have attacked him while he was hunting, and he stole the Shamantaka jewel, because, he mentioned before that he wanted Ugrasena to have it, and I said no, so this is probably what happened. And so the residents of Dwarka heard this, and word got back to Krishna. And Krishna, most people obviously knew that Krishna wouldn't do such a thing. But Krishna, as a king there, he thought, okay, well, I have to clear my name. This isn't something I have done, nor it would be something that I would do, but, I'm going to go clear my name. So he went and he tracked Prasena's path. He saw where he went hunting. He tracked his horse, and he found both Prasena and the dead horse there. And then he also saw that there was evidence that he was, mauled by a lion. And so then Krishna followed the lion's tracks. And then just outside of that mountain cave was the body of the lion. And so he said, okay, well, the jewel is then inside. So Krishna went inside of the dark cave, and he sees this effulgence in there. And so there was just a little cub, and he was playing around with this jewel. And so Krishna, determined to take that jewel back to its rightful owner, started walking toward Jambavan's son. And when the nurse saw that, the nurse who was taking care of Jambavan's son, she screamed, because she thought, oh, someone's coming and they're gonna harm this child. And so Jambavan came, and he started to fight with Krishna. And this was one of these amazing fights. It took place, it lasted 28 days. There was all sorts of, you can read about all of the details, but extremely well-skilled fight. And neither Krishna nor Jambavan could get the upper hand on the other. Of course, Krishna could have, but when Krishna fights with his devotees, he likes to allow them to, be matched with him, right? Because that's what a warrior wants. A warrior doesn't want an easy fight. A warrior wants a challenge. So when Krishna fights with one of his devotee warriors, then he gives them a proper challenge. And he also doesn't, wipe them out immediately, as he could, but he doesn't. So anyway, after this 28-day intense battle, Jambavan understood, okay, no one in the three worlds can possibly, beat me, nor could they be my match. So this has to be none other than my beloved Ramachandra. So he understood Krishna's position. So he stopped the fight, offered prayers to Lord Krishna, understanding that was his worshipable deity, and to cover or to counteract his offense of fighting with the Lord, he offered, first he gave the Shamantaka jewel back to him, and then he offered the hand of his beautiful daughter, Jambavati. And so Krishna then returned to Dwaraka with the Shamantaka jewel and with Jambavati. He gave the jewel back to Satyajit, and he married Jambavati there. Now, Satyajit now, of course, felt ashamed because he accused Krishna of stealing the gem. And then he found out, obviously, Krishna didn't steal the gem. And after getting it back, he returned it to Satyajit, where he could have just kept it himself, but he didn't. And so he felt super ashamed, and he wanted to rectify that. And he wanted to do something about that. So he approached Krishna. He gave him the Shamantaka jewel, and he also gave him the hand of his daughter, Satyabhama. All right. So Krishna accepted Satyabhama, but he gave the jewel back to Satyajit. He said, "No, it's okay. I don't need this jewel. But yes, I will accept your lovely daughter in marriage." So there's Satyabhama. So far that's three: Rukmini, Jambavati, Satyabhama. Then, after a while living in Dwaraka, I'm sure all of you also recall the story of the Pandavas and the house of lac, where the Pandavas were given this nice big vacation home, but it was super flammable, and so they were meant to stay there, and then for some time, and then at one point the caretaker of that property was going to light the house on fire, and then all the Pandavas would have perished. But of course, the Pandavas understood what was going on. They built a mine underneath the house as an escape route, and they knew when the house was going to be set fire, so they escaped, and they were okay. Of course, Krishna knew that they were okay, but since the rumor came, "Oh no, the Pandavas are dead," he said, "Okay, well, I have to go now and check." All right. So Krishna went and he visited with the Pandavas. And while there, one day, he and Arjuna were out practicing their martial arts. So they were hunting. And they saw this beautiful maiden on the bank of the Yamuna. And so Krishna asked Arjuna to go and find out who she was. And so Arjuna approached and he said, "Oh, fine wasted woman, please tell me, who you are, who you belong to." She said, "Yeah, I live in the Yamuna, in this palace underneath the water, and I'm here waiting for Lord Vishnu. I want to meet him, and then I want to marry him." And so Arjuna told Krishna, and then so Krishna married Kalindi, also known as Yamuna. So that's 4. Then there is Mitravinda. She was deeply attached to Lord Krishna, and in a similar way to Rukmini, Krishna abducted her. Then there's Satya, or Nagnajiti, the daughter of Nagnajit. In order to win the hand of Satya, Krishna subdued 7 ferocious wild bulls, and so he expanded himself into 7. And that was sort of the understanding, is that anybody who could tame these 7 ferocious bulls would be awarded with the hand of Satya in marriage. So Krishna easily did that, and so then he married Satya. Then there's Bhadra. Bhadra was given to Krishna by her brothers. Her brothers said, "Okay, Krishna would be a nice, suitable husband for you," and so that was arranged that way. Then there was Lakshmana. who, similar to Rukmini and Mitravinda, was abducted from her Swayamvar ceremony. And so that's 8. So that's the main 8. Then the story of the other 16,100 comes from, there was a demon named Narakasur, also known as Bhaumasur, because he was the son of Bhumi, Mother Earth. Consequently, he's also the son of Lord Varahadev. Lord Varahadev and Mother Bhumi had a son, Bhauma, who, due to bad association, became known as Bhaumasur or Narakasur. And he was a bit of a kleptomaniac. He liked to steal things. Some of the things he stole were Varuna's umbrella, Aditi's earrings. She's the mother of the Devatas. He stole her earrings. And not only small stuff like that, like those things would be, I mean, obviously they're not easy to steal because it's from Devatas. But, you know, being the son of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has some skills. But not only did he steal things like the umbrella and the earrings, but he also stole Mani Parvata, which is the pleasure grove of the Devatas. We're talking this huge area where the Devatas would go to play. He took the whole area. You know, he was able to do that. So, and he also kidnapped 16,100 princesses. And so I believe it was Indra, because his mother was a Aditi and her earrings were stolen. So he went to Krishna and he asked, hey, can you do something about this? And so Krishna did. He went and he fought Narakasur's armies, and then he fought with him. And then, so all of these items were then returned to their owners. But when these 16,100 princesses saw Krishna, and saw what he did to rescue them from their captor, they all immediately and intensely desired for him to be their husband because he was their protector, right? And so Krishna agreed to marry all 16,100 of those princesses. So there's the 16,108 wives that Krishna had. Now, today's verse mentioned that it says palaces plural. So so Prabhupada in his purport mentions how each of them had their own palace equipped with their own compounds and gardens. So it's not just, you know, a bunch of palaces there, but they each have their own outside areas that are, you know, for each of the princesses. And Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead and being absolute, he's able to expand himself into 16,108 forms so that he can enter each of these palaces simultaneously and interact with each of his wives in a very specific and unique way. So obviously Krishna is Krishna. So he has his blue complexion. He's wearing yellow cloth. He has specific types of jewelry on. But for each of his queens, there are subtle differences, whether in the way he's wearing his dhoti, his mannerisms, the way he's dealing. But each devotee gets their own version, basically, of Krishna that complements their own set of mannerisms and habits and like that, preferences. And so this is similar. This concept is similar when Krishna enters his palaces like that, when he expands himself. It's similar to the concept in the rasa dance, rasa dance, where Krishna expanded himself unlimitedly so that he could dance with each of the gopis. And each gopi thought that Krishna was dancing alone with her. And somehow the other gopis, unfortunately, were being left out, right? And this was the perception of each gopi that they alone are dancing with Krishna. Another example that is like this is when Krishna would eat lunch with the cowherd boys. So there were thousands of cowherd boys, and every day around noon, Krishna would sit down, and all the boys would sit around him in these concentric circles. So there's thousands of them. So it's like, you know, all these different concentric circles coming out from Krishna in the center. And each of them had the experience that Krishna was looking at him, every single one of them, no matter which ring, even if they were on the outermost concentric ring, and on the other side, it still seemed that Krishna was sitting face to face with each of these boys and sharing the lunch, which was convenient because each of the mothers of these cowherd boys, when they would prepare the lunch for their son, they would also know, okay, well, they're going to be also eating with Krishna. So they would make special preparations just for Krishna. So they would give the mothers would give the boy their lunch, and they'd say, these I especially made for Krishna. He very much likes these. You make sure he gets these, right? And so each of them had that, right? And so they're all trying to feed Krishna. And of course, Krishna is also trying to share his lunch with each of these boys. And so it works like this with Krishna because he's unlimited. He can have unlimited personal experiences with an unlimited amount of people simultaneously. And there's no loss or diminution in him. It doesn't take away from him in any way. He's full, complete in himself. So here in today's verse, we see another example of that, where he's expanding into 16,108 so that he can please each of his wives, who are all dear devotees of his. And so it's sometimes explained that, Krishna being a king in Dwarka, sometimes all the kings would have to meet. They would go to the meeting hall and they would discuss things. And then so there was one Krishna there. But when it was time to return home, then he'd be walking to his palace and he would expand into those 16,108. And then he would enter each palace, and then each queen would get a very unique experience with her husband. And so this is the wonder of Krishna. And one thing that I always like to point out when discussing this is that the very different subtle mannerisms and characteristics of Krishna with each of his devotees, it actually depends on the devotee. So Krishna, you would say, adjusts himself or changes for his devotee. He's actually controlled by only his pure devotees can control him, but he's actually controlled by his pure devotees. So if his pure devotee has a certain preference, then Krishna accommodates that preference like that when they're interacting with one another. And so this shows not only Krishna's unconditional love for us, but it also shows such a deeper love that we can't experience in this material world, that he's actually willing to, not only willing, he wants to mold himself in such a way that it is perfectly complementary with his devotee. In other words, he's completely full in himself. He doesn't need anything. He doesn't even need anyone to he doesn't need a thing. He's complete. But it makes him feel more complete when he pleases his devotees. So this is a very important aspect of our philosophy that we can understand. Even so, before we mentioned Varaha and Bhumi, because we were talking about Narakasur, Balmasur, and so, and I use this example often because it seems to be a strange one from an outside perspective, because Bhumi, she's a great devotee, and when she was in distress, when she was knocked out of her position and placed into the ocean, she needed help, and she needed very specific help. She needed to be rooted out of the ocean and put back in her place. And so Varahadev, the Lord, came as a boar, because that's what boars do. They reach down with their nose, which is sort of like spoon shaped, and they root up whatever's there, and and then they lift it like that, uproot. And so that was the perfect form for him to take. He could take any form, right? But this was the perfect form for him to take in that situation. And Mother Bhumi, of course, appreciated that. So anytime we read about Krishna's different incarnations, we should remember that these incarnations are based on the devotee's needs and desires. They're not based on, it's not that Krishna was like, okay, well, I kind of feel like taking the form of a pig today. But if it doesn't fit the situation, it wouldn't make much sense. It could work, of course, but it wouldn't make as much sense. It wouldn't be as relishable, right? So, when Narasingha comes, he comes very specifically because, Lord Brahma gave the boon to Hiranyakashipu that he couldn't be killed by any man or beast. He couldn't be killed in the air or on the ground or in the water. Couldn't be killed at the daytime or the nighttime. Couldn't be killed inside or outside. So he had all of these specifications on how he couldn't be killed, and so he thought he was invincible. He thought he couldn't be killed. But Narasingha, he's part lion, part man. He's not killed by any weapon because it's the nails of the Supreme Lord. He was in the doorway, which isn't inside or outside. It was right at the threshold. The sun was on the horizon, so it was Sandhya, so it's not day or night. He wasn't in the air, ground, or sky. He was on the lap of the Supreme Lord. So he has very specific. When he appears, there's always a reason for his specific form that he has, and it's always because of the devotee's needs and desires and proclivities, propensities. That. So let's see. I thought those stories were going to take me a lot longer to tell, but they didn't. But that's okay. So what we can take away from this, it's mostly, today's class is mostly about appreciation of Krishna and understanding that, how he reciprocates with his devotees. And like I say, he doesn't do so on his own terms or according to his own desires or whims. He does it, and they are his desires because he wants to please the devotee, but it's very much influenced by the devotee. And so this is the kind of devotee that we want to become. We don't want to remain the kind of devotee who, understands that Krishna is there, understands that he's the supreme controller, but we still have, our own independent desires. We still have things that we want to accomplish independent from Krishna. We don't want to remain that type of aspiring devotee. We want to become a pure devotee whose only desire is to serve Krishna. There's nothing else. Oh, Jai, Shri Radha Bihari Ki Jai. Thank you for that. Only desire is to serve Krishna. And when we become that type of devotee, then the loving relationship and the reciprocation is beyond anything that we can even fathom. And so in order to get from where we are now to where these devotees who we're reading about are, it takes a bit of practice at first. Sorry. It takes a bit of practice at first because we know what we want to become. We understand it in theory, at least. But in order to show Krishna that is actually what we want, we have to step out of our comfort zone from time to time and engage in services that we know will please him, that aren't necessarily our natural, tendency, right? And so we make decisions. We say, okay, normally under normal situations, I would do something like this, but I know from associating with devotees and from studying Shastra and the clarity that comes with chanting japa, the Chetodarpana Marjanam process, I now understand that instead of doing this, whatever specific activity that I would normally do under normal circumstances, because of those things, the association with devotees, the studying of Shastra, and the clarification that comes from japa, and of course the orders of the spiritual master, because of those things, I see that I should do this instead. So I have a tendency to do this, but there's overwhelming evidence that shows me instead I should do this. Now, when we make that decision and we actually do the other thing based on Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, and the clarity that comes from chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Krishna sees that, okay, although this aspiring devotee of mine certainly still has some tendencies to enjoy separately from me, he's now making decisions based on Guru Sadhu Shastra and based on the clarity that I'm awarding him when he's chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and asking for service. Krishna sees that we're making those choices. And if we continuously make those choices and consistently make those choices, instead of, every once in a while I'll do the right thing, but otherwise I kind of, follow my own path. When he sees that we're sincere and diligent, and even if we don't always make the right decision, if we're always trying to make that right decision and always trying to improve, then Krishna sees that, he sees that sincerity, he sees that desire, and then he makes it easier for us to make those decisions. The decisions start becoming easier because we start, and you could just look at the path of devotional service, starting with Shraddha, ending with Prema. You look at all the different steps, and you can see how eventually, once someone has been steady for some time, you can see how that would then automatically result in developing a taste. Because first you're going through regulations. You're doing things because you know they're right, not because necessarily you want to do them spontaneously, but you know it's the right thing to do. Then after doing that for some time, there's a taste, because we're actually doing something that is higher. We're serving Krishna. Serving Krishna is a higher taste than serving ourselves. So that taste gets there, right? And then when the taste is there, after a while, this attachment forms. It's not just that we appreciate the taste, it's that we need that taste. We want it, we're attached to it, right? And then so we can see that this is how the process works. So no matter where we are on this path, it's always very important for us to pay attention to the instructions of the Guru, the message that is in the Shastra. It's important for us to associate with fellow aspiring Vaishnavas, the sadhus. And it is important for us that when we chant our japa, we're asking Krishna for service, and he's rewarding us with clarity of how the world actually is. It's important for us to see the world as he's showing us and make our decisions based on that. And when we do that, when we base our decisions on those things instead of, how am I feeling today? What am I hungry for? What kind of activity do I want to do to be entertained today? When we start thinking less like that and more like, what should I be doing according to Guru Sadhu Shastra? And what is Krishna revealing to me in my japa and telling me what to do? Then we see that the advancement comes so much more smoothly and rapidly. And that's what we want. And then eventually we can become devotees, the type of devotees that we're reading about, where Krishna actually wants to change something about himself in order to complement our specific mood, right? And that's just the most beautiful thing, the most beautiful relationship that you could even imagine, where the Supreme Lord is taking pleasure. He actually is taking pleasure from making us feel complete like that, complementing our specific individuality. And that only comes with pure devotional service. Now, here in the material world, we're trying to control Krishna, right? But there in the spiritual world, he's controlled by the devotees. So once we stop trying to control Krishna, and once we just naturally love him spontaneously, then he actually does change, and he becomes under the control of the devotee. That's of course not our motive, but that's what happens, because that's the kind of person he is. And so naturally, that's the kind of person that he's easy to fall in love with. That type of person, so easy to fall in love with. And he's the only one that's like that. He's the supreme. So I think I'll stop here and see if there is anything that anyone wants to add, any sort of appreciations. I left out a lot of details of Krishna's various wives. If anybody wants to reflect on some of those, or or just in general, or if there are any questions like that. Acharya Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna, how are you?
Go
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the awesome class. I just wanted to share a little Prabhupada story, a little Prabhupada remembrance.
Please.
He was talking, I actually can't remember the exact pastime, but he was talking about child Krishna's pastimes with Yashoda and Nanda. Maybe it was the incident where Krishna took Nanda's shoes on his head and carried them to him. And Prabhupada said, the Mayavadis, they want to become God. But why do you want to become God? Become a devotee and you could become greater than God.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a beautiful story. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Prabhu. And the wonderful class, you gave a lot of information. And, like normal people think, oh, Krishna has too many wives. How is he doing? Like that. But if they know all this, they specifically, it is something, it's very interesting. And they came to him, but he didn't go just like that with anybody. And here, he is in full in, what is it, knowledge. And then I read here, the places, he is fulfilling all the desires of the Lord. Like all of them, they will be illuminated by jewels and everything. He took care of all the wives so good. And he was a very, how they loved, because the way his name is like that, he's beauty, he's beautiful. So that is something. And everything, he is unlimited, and then his desires are so unlimited, and supplies is also unlimited, and everything being unlimited is constantly described here as Sarva Kamam. So that was really, really something, Prabhu. But though it is small purport, it has so much information in this.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much for giving all the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, sometimes if someone's a very like pious Hindu, for example, sometimes they don't appreciate Krishna, because Krishna, not only does he have 16,108 wives, but he's also dancing with these married ladies by the Yamuna during the moonlight. And so they say, no, he's a debauchee, and they prefer to worship Ramachandra because Ramachandra, he's very pious, he's very dharmic. And so they're also trying to be dharmic. Of course, most of them are only being dharmic so they can get to the heavenly planets and enjoy. But that's another story. But so one such pious Hindu was talking to Prabhupada and saying that, Krishna, he's not very dharmic. He has all these girlfriends and wives. And Prabhupada said, no. He said, you're the debauchee, because you've taken one of Krishna's wives. Everything belongs to God, and you took a wife, and you took it from him. So that's Krishna. So you're the one that's the problem. So it's like that. So now, so the thing is that Krishna, he's the only one that can take care of all of us.
That's true.
In the material world, we take a spouse, and we're not perfect spouses. Krishna is always the perfect spouse. And it doesn't matter how many he has, he can do that. We can't. And so sometimes people look at Krishna's pastimes from a mundane point of view, and they start to criticize him for doing certain things. So from an outsider point of view, it could have looked like he was running away from, who was it? Was it Jarasandha that he fled the battlefield a bunch of times?
Yeah.
Was it Jarasandha?
Yeah.
So some would say from an outside point of view that he was a coward. They'll look at him, he won't even fight, he's running away like that. And, but those who actually know Krishna and his personality, So it's
It is a
yeah,
wonderful purport.
it's very sweet pastime.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for explaining.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Yeah. Oh,
Hare
Sai Bhai,
Krishna.
yes, please.
Yeah,
Hare Krishna.
very nice class, Prabhu, and really you tell nice stories about how Krishna married all his 8 main wives, and all others, and also the main point was we have to become a devotee, try to be pure devotee. So we need not worry about anything, Krishna will be listening to us. He gets controlled by his devotees all the time. So, and he fulfills the pure desire of the devotees. So we have to just try to strive for becoming a devotee, try harder to become a pure devotee. So that's important for all of us. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you. Archana Bhakti Mata, you have your hand up, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Sorry, I joined late, so I missed the first part where you described how Lord Krishna married the queens. But the comment that, the discussion that was happening, I thought I'll just add one point there. So not only do the pious people, people who say that Krishna is a debauchee, or, the other side of it is they try to explain that Krishna actually did not do that. I just happened to see some time ago, it was a while ago, but, in Mahabharata, they try to show that Krishna says that I rescued these 16,000 princesses, but I'm not going to have any married relationship with them, just so that I will protect them from the society, so that they won't be abused by others. So you see, the picture that they're trying to portray is he's so righteous. So trying to put him inside our box, what we think is good, and we try to put Krishna inside that, so that, he still remains good, he's not bad. It's just the other side of the same coin. So they say he's telling them that, I want to make it sure that, I want to make it clear to all of you that, I'm not going to have any relationship with all of you. I'll just marry you for the sake of the world, so that you will be protected. But, I will be like Lord Ramchandra. In other words, I'll have one wife, but all of you are there with me. I'm just marrying you. This is just another type of Mayavad only. So
it's actually a good example for now, because sometimes new devotees, or someone who's just reading, they're not even aspiring devotees, but they're reading, and they see something that they don't understand. And so sometimes a devotee will sort of adjust the philosophy a little bit to accommodate this person's understanding. And that's also wrong to do. It's the same thing. Just like another thing, some of the Madhvas, this chapter about Lord Brahma stealing the cowherd boys and him being bewildered, it's not in there because Brahma is the head of our sampradaya, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya, right? Brahma. So how could he become bewildered? So they actually don't have those 2 chapters in Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
So no, that didn't happen. Brahma, he's a devotee. He's the head of our line. That didn't happen. He couldn't be bewildered. He knows Krishna's God like that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so anytime we try to change Krishna's pastimes due to our mundane understanding of what piety is, in other words, we think we know what piety is, and then we adjust Krishna's pastimes to fit into our idea of piety. That's wrong. It's doing a major disservice.
Exactly.
We think we're doing a service because we're trying to make it more appealing to or understandable to newer devotees, but what we're doing is we're ruining it. No, Krishna has his pastimes. We read them as they are. We may not understand them. We may think that they're not in line with what we think is right and wrong. But eventually, we will see how all of it is actually. So it's not our place to change things. It's our place to at least understand that that's how. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Prabhu.
No, go ahead.
No, in Dwapar Yuga, Krishna could protect like that, marrying them like that. But in Kali Yuga, even that is not there, Prabhu.
No. I'll
So,
say. Yeah.
thank you very much, Prabhu.
Sure.
Nice class. Yeah, like I said, small purport, but it has so much information in that.
My pleasure. I thought I was going to go over time because when I was reviewing all of the different queens of Krishna, I thought, well, I could talk about this for a really long time. So I tried to sort of cut each story down a little bit, and I guess I cut them down further than I needed to.
Yeah.
But
It's a very nice thing, and everybody should know about this. It's not just like that he married 16,108 wives.
yeah.
And some people, like no knowledge, they'll always talk, like that playboy, like that. No, that is not the thing. They need to know all these stories. Reality.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that I couldn't recall a couple of the names because I remember when I was studying through Bhagavatam, I made it a point to have those main 8 and recall all of the situations, but I didn't have all 8 of them. I had 6. I couldn't remember 2 of them, and then as I read, I thought, oh, how did I forget that one? Like that. But yeah, from time to time, it's good for us to, no matter how long we've been around, to sort of refresh on these stories.
But with the health like yours, with you're not feeling well, but even then you did very good. You covered a lot of things, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Take care of your health.
Thank you. And you take care of your health too. It sounds like maybe you're going through something.
Yeah, since 1 week, 10 days, I'm having this.
I hope it.
Yeah. Like she said, thank you very much, Prabhu. We actually had Ramcharan Prabhu of a few verses ago. He had his purport had the names of the wives, so we had gone over.
Oh.
But like you said, it is good because it is, Krishna Katha is something we can hear over and over and over again and still not be tired. It's
each time it will be new.
This is very nice. So thank you very much. The takeaway for me is to try and be that good devotee. That is what we need to work on. That is what we are trying to do, and that's what we need to get better at. So that's the takeaway for today for me.
Right. Good takeaway.
Yes. And like Mother Vindyavali said, thank you for giving a nice class, even though you are a little under the weather. We will all pray that you get better soon and join us back on camera.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if there are no more questions, we can end the class here. We'll meet again tomorrow morning at 7:50 for Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Jai.